Alright, and we're back. So, last time it was bank robbers, and now we're moving our way up the criminal ladder to mad scientists. This time, Batman is tackling the dangerous man known as Dr. Death. But much like the previous episode, Batman has nothing to fear from this villain, let me tell you. In fact, much like the previous story, Batman dominates this man. It's actually, in a way, kind of sad considering how things end up for the good doctor, but I won't spoil that. This story actually takes place across 2 episodes of Detective Comics. The first issue and then the follow-up, which is the sequel, appearing in the second issue. Now, I've compiled both of these stories into one episode for you guys because I like you guys. I don't think you should have to wait. So as you can see in this opening panel, Dr. Death is quite the mad scientist. He spends his time developing a devious poisonous pollen that will kill anyone who breathes it in. Of course, Batman is also there waiting in the window. It looks like the doctor is completely unaware that he's about to get pounded. Dr. Death has a master plan to make himself fabulously rich. You know, he is going to extort a fortune from the wealthy elite of the city by utilizing his death pollen to threaten them. Now, his plan is masterful, but his only worry is the devious Batman, who could possibly be the only person in the entire world who can stop him. So the doctor decides to set a trap for the Batman, and it leaves a personal ad in the newspaper to get Batman's attention. The next day, Bruce Wayne wakes up to find this advertisement in the paper instructing Batman to collect a letter from a very specific post office. Now, Bruce goes out and collects this letter, which then directs him to a meeting place in the luxurious Beverly Apartments at 10 p.m., presumably the home of Dr. Death. And now we have these panels, which I always love. These are the rundown of some of the early Golden Age gadgets that Batman is going to need for this adventure. First, he's going to need his suit, which is always a classic. And then he's going to bring some gas pallets to protect himself, and some suction gloves, which will help him climb on sheer surfaces. Those gadgets, combined with his trusty silk rope, which we've seen in the previous issue, it seems that Batman is building himself that legendary arsenal of gadgets that we all know and love. And now we get to see those gadgets in action as Batman puts them to immediate usage as Batman arrives at the penthouse and climbs up the side of this building. And then when Batman makes it to the top, he doesn't just enter the building. Instead, he waits. He waits and surveys the area. And this is smart, because it turns out the meeting is actually, obviously, everybody knows, a trap. You know, and Batman ends up being held at gunpoint by some of Dr. Death's thugs. However, these guys completely underestimate who they're dealing with, and Batman is quick to defend from the attack. Just then, Dr. Death's second in command, someone named Jabba, enters the room and fires his weapon at Batman. It's a direct hit. Batman takes the bullet to the shoulder, and luckily, he is prepared to make a swift escape. He utilizes one of his gas pellets to obfuscate the room, and then leaps out the window to his silk rope below, which he uses to swing himself to safety. So this makes me laugh. The next day, Batman is safe, but he is wounded. So he goes to the family doctor to get the bullet removed. The doctor is understandably curious as to how Bruce Wayne got shot, but Bruce just flippantly disregards it and leaves. So I guess, you know, we're just not going to discuss it. And I wonder if this is how Bruce deals with all of his injuries. Like, is this doctor just compiling evidence? How long is this going to take for him to figure out that Bruce is actually Batman? Meanwhile, Dr. Death sends Jabba to go extort some money from a powerful businessman. Just like he said he would. I guess he figures that Batman is out of the way, at least for now. But he is clearly underestimating the intensity of Bruce Wayne. He is committed to winning this fight, as we're about to see. Bruce happens to spot Jabba while he's on his way to complete his deed of death. And fortunately, Bruce is able to grab the man and pull him away before the spores reach him and kill him. So this means that Bruce can follow Jabba unaware all the way back to his hideout. Now that he knows for sure where Dr. Death lives, there is nothing stopping him from coming back as Batman and going in for the kill, which is exactly what he does. Batman comes in through the back of the house undetected, and he catches both Dr. Death and Jabba completely off guard. And then with great skill, he takes his silk rope and he lassos it around Jabba's neck and he chokes him. He keeps choking him until he's dead. Then the Doctor, who is understandably freaked out that Batman just showed up and killed somebody, he tries to run away. He makes his escape through a trap door in his floor, but Batman is in hot pursuit. He is not going to give up. So finally, Dr. Death is just cornered there, and he tries to use his spores to kill Batman. But Batman knocks it out of his hand, and it causes a fire. Now Dr. Death and Batman are in his basement, in his secret laboratory, surrounded by flames. And they have no way to escape. So Batman decides to just coldly leave him there to burn to death. In his own secret lab, he just leaves him there to burn. As Batman says, death to Dr. Death. So that was some cold-blooded murder right there. Don't get me wrong. It was cool. It's cool as fuck. But it's still cold-blooded murder when you really think about it. Batman followed Jabba home. Then he came back later with some of his gear and just killed both of them in the middle of the night and set the whole damn estate on fire. So Batman is like, he's such a predator. It's fucking awesome. But this is not the end of Dr. Death. Unlike most villains, he gets 2 appearances in the Golden Age, which is rare and very cool. So you're not supposed to know this is a Dr. Death story. You're just supposed to assume that he is dead already because he was burned alive. Who wouldn't assume that he was dead? But the omnibus titles of this story, it titles the story as The Return of Dr. Death. So that's, you know, that's pretty much spoiling it right there, right off the bat. Anyway, let's get into it. So this title opens up with this panel explaining that Batman watches Dr. Death burn alive as per the events of the previous story, and yet strangely enough, the morning paper talks about a man who died in the same manner as the previous victims of Dr. Death's pollen, so the murders are continuing even though Dr. Death is no longer around. So Bruce decides that this is ominous enough, and he starts to investigate by visiting the deceased man's widow. The widow explains that Dr. Death threatened them that if they didn't pay $1 million, he would kill them. But they didn't pay because they didn't have the money. They didn't have anything except for some spare diamonds. Bruce, of course, advises her to put the diamonds in a safe place, as the doctor will most certainly come back for them to collect them. Then he goes and he gets his suit and returns back to the widow's house to protect her. As we can see here, Dr. Death is horribly disfigured. He survived the fire by slipping through a trapdoor. It's just flippantly explained away like that. But not before losing everything, all of his money, his estate, and of course, apparently his outer layer of skin. Now, he has no money, but he does have a new bodyguard by the name of Mikhail, who he sends out to collect the widow's diamonds. So Mikhail goes to the widow's home to collect the diamonds. But what he doesn't realize is that Batman has pretty much already put the mystery together. And he's just sitting there waiting in ambush. Unfortunately, Mikhail rouses the widow from her sleep. He wakes her up, and she appears just in time to see her precious diamonds getting stolen. Mikhail has no qualms about killing an old woman because he's apparently some kind of monster. But luckily Batman is there, and Batman has a code of honor. So he stops Mikhail from killing the widow. He knocks Mikhail through the window, but he lets him keep the diamonds as he knows this will allow him to follow Mikhail back to his hideout. Then, as a good gentleman does, he carries the old woman upstairs and puts her back into bed. Can you believe it? Mikhail comes to consciousness, just like Batman predicted he would, and he goes to sell the diamonds to a fence at a pawn shop. Batman follows him home and remarks about how poor he must have been after the estate burned down, because they're living in like this deranged, this tiny little halfway house kind of thing. But Batman doesn't necessarily care. He decides to scale the side of the building and he breaks into Mikhail's apartment. Batman then waits for Mikhail to sleep and tosses a gas pellet into his apartment. Then, when he's knocked out, he searches for clues and he discovers where Dr. Death has been hiding. You'll never believe it. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work out very well. Mikhail wakes up and he fires a pistol at Batman, who leaps out of the window and latches onto his trusty silk rope, a patented escape method for Batman. Mikhail sticks his head out of the window to catch Batman, but this turns out to be a fatal mistake because Batman, on his return swing, kicks Mikhail in the head and snaps his neck. So that's another death. Batman's body count is just going up. Actually, now that I think about it, first it was Jabba, then it was Dr. Death, now it's Mikhail, and he's actually probably going to kill Dr. Death again. I don't know if that counts as 3 or 4. Not to mention what he did to Frenchy Blake's gang. Is Batman a psychopath? I don't know. So now Batman is at a dead end. He has no idea where to find Dr. Death because he just killed his only lead. Then suddenly it hits him. And he swings off to visit the fence. The fence who bought the diamonds. Of course, this fence is just completely terrified to see Batman come into his shop. He tries to escape, but, as we know, Batman is just impossible to escape from. Batman uses his lasso to capture the fence, and his disguise falls off. And it shows us that he is actually Dr. Death. We get to see his face is horribly disfigured, and I have to admit, I feel a slight amount of sympathy for the man. Batman decides, surprisingly, not to kill him. Instead, he just collects the widow's jewels and leaves the doctor for the police. So I guess if I've learned anything from this story, it's the old adage that crime does not pay. Dr. Death was a renowned scientist with incredible intelligence, wealth, and an estate full of servants. But he wanted even more, and he turned to crime. Now look at him. He's horribly disfigured, he lives in a rundown apartment, and he works at a dusty old pawn shop. It makes me feel genuinely sorry for him. But at least Batman didn't kill him. There's that. There's a little bit of humanity in there, as if Batman must have felt bad for him too. And maybe that's a precursor to what Batman is going to become, because as Batman grows, especially after he gets Robin, he would become more of a human character in his approach to how he fights crime, as he prepares to enter into the Silver Age. But don't worry, we're still far from that day. We've still got plenty of killing to do. Anyway, that's it for this comic. I hope you enjoyed the saga of Dr. Death. If you liked reading this comic with me and you want to read more, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And if you really want to support me, then why not donate to my Patreon? Until next time, nerds, stay heroic.